You are listening to the Therefore a Geek podcast, episode 87. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Therefore a Geek. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dude.
And this week we are Sans Tracy.
Special edition podcast.
Is that why you're dancing?
Yeah, basically. This is kind of poetic, right? Because of the topic we're covering. The differences and frictions between men and women feature prominently in our topic.
Very true.
Yeah.
So what is our topic this week?
Our topic is the very famous anime Cowboy Bebop from 1998 through 1999 if you're going by the Japanese release, or 2001 and 2002 if you're going by the Adult Swim. Now, this was my personal favorite anime. I watched it on like the late night Adult Swim in like 2000 or 2001 with my brother. And it's been my favorite ever since, and it's one of those things where if I want to introduce people to an anime, when I was a really, really big anime fan, this is one of the shows I would show them.
Yeah, and Emily, it is very, very good. I mean, you have been trying to get me to to watch this show for years.
Sure.
And I just kind of never did. And then, I mean, we had talked about doing this episode really even before we brought you on in a more full-time capacity on the podcast. We talked about doing this, and it's just taken this long for me to get through it, and I'm disappointed in myself for having waited this long, because it is that good.
It is a fun show, and it basically revolves around we were talking before we were getting into it, we were trying to just figure out how we describe it, but it basically revolves around a group of bounty hunters in the late 21st century, where the solar system is mostly terraformed in a kind of strange, fuzzy science way. And it's essentially the Old West in its kind of culture, but not in its technology. And it tells a story of Spike Spiegel, a former gang member or a mafia member, Jet Black, a former special forces cop, a woman named Faye Valentine, who doesn't even know who she is, a kind of transgenderish hacker, and a super duper data dog, and their adventures and misadventures over the course of 26 episodes.
Yeah, and misadventures is a fitting description, because this is a group of individuals who don't usually get their man.
No, and I think you count maybe 3 or 4 actual bounties they get. So every time they go for a bounty, they're more likely not to get it. And when they do get a bounty, it's like small fries.
Yeah. it's
real small fries. But it's a very, very interesting, fun show that I recommend to everybody. And especially because, like I said before we started, the best way I could describe this show as kind of a send-off to the 20th century pop culture. Because it comes out in 1998 in Japan. It's seen in the United States in 2001. The movie comes out in 2001. And it's just kind of chock full of these pop culture references from beginning to end.
Well, and it's an exceptionally well-made, very tight 26 episods.
In each episode, it's a very tight episode.
Yeah,
like they do not dilly-dally.
Yeah, 25, 26-minute episodes.
Yeah. If you include like the bumper stuff.
Right. No, that's true. And I would say this is definitely one of those series that it doesn't have like that instantaneous appeal. Like, where I go like, I read the box and I go, oh man, I got to watch this. But as soon as I started watching it and we got into the credits and the music and everything, I'm just going, okay, this is something worth watching. It may not be like the thing I'm super most interested in, but there is a quality and a level of, for lack of a better term, the artists put into it, that you can tell like this is going to be something.
Yeah, this series straddles like 2 major anime styles, that of like the late 90s and then what started to happen in the early 20th century. You can kind of see it where it mishmashes kind of computer-generated animation a little bit for backgrounds and like the ships, and maybe cell layovers of cells and matte paintings and stuff like that. And then it also has that early 90s like Akira feel, where the backgrounds or the cars and the buildings are all really, really detailed.
Yeah.
So there's certain episodes where it's got a grit to it, a visual grit to it that fits the story really, really well, and it doesn't kind of take you out of it by looking kind of strange.
I would say it has a visual grit to it, but at the same time, it's not always that way.
No, it's not.
I mean, there are a lot of really great down moments and very great interpersonal moments, especially as the series comes to a conclusion. And I will admit to having watched the last 4 episodes like 6 hours ago. But as the series comes to a close, you get those moments more and more between the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hits on many, many different levels in terms of what I'm looking for in a show. It has, the action, it's got the high concept stuff, it's got the personal drama. It's just, there is so much to offer in, like I said, in 26 episodes in a very, very short package.
It's also really funny. It's got an incredibly dry sense of humor. Like it's not an over the top. It doesn't kind of get silly until you add Edward as a character in like episode 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the show is a very dry, smart ass show.
Yeah, and that's always fun because, humor doesn't necessarily translate language very well.
Oh yeah, cultures. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, cultures even more so. Especially east to west, but even like languages. I mean, humor relies so often on like turns of phrase and things like that it's difficult to port from one language to another.
Certainly. And I think the voice actors, at least the English voice actors, and I'm one of those anime fans that I prefer English voice actors over Japanese voice actors.
I do as well, mostly because I don't
like them better.
I don't want to try and read while also trying to watch TV. Like, under certain circumstances, I'll do that, like watching a Kurosawa film or something. But for the most part, if I'm just trying to watch like anime, I will watch an English dub just because it's easier.
Yeah, I don't like dubbing live actors because live actors, their performance is multifaceted. It's their physical as well as their voice that make a character. But with a anime, it's really just the quality of the voice actor and how well it matches up with how the character is drawn.
Yeah.
So that I kind of am not a purist in that sense. So I really enjoy the voice cast. I think the draw for me for this particular series is how good the characters are. Like that's what like the main draw for me is like how interesting and how magnetic Spike, Jet, Faye, Ed, and even the dog are.
It's funny how well defined they are while simultaneously being very ill defined. Like
yeah.
The characters, even by the end of the series, are still very mysterious to the audience.
That's a really interesting aspect of this show is so much is left unexplained.
Yes. Like
so much. The show really makes you fill in the gaps. And over the course of the 26 episodes, you're right, it's an episodic series that it's all kind of bundled up, by the end of the 25 minutes, each little adventure they get into. But every couple episodes, they have a development episode where we learn a little bit about Jet's past. You see a character like let's take Jet for example. He's this big guy who looks older. He's like 36 in the show. He's missing. He has a robotic arm. He's got this ship. You slowly find out it's his ship, and through each episode about Jet, you learn about his ex-girlfriend, his ex-partner, how he lost his arm, why he left the Force. But it's kind of spaced out, but you never get the full story.
Yeah.
You just get little. Same thing with Spike, is he used to be part of this syndicate called the Red Dragon. He had this girlfriend named Julia. We know he left. We know he has a fake eye, and we know people think he's dead. But we actually never find out the true internal politics that caused him to leave, or even how he and Jet met in the first place.
Yeah. That too.
We never find that out. And Faye's a similar way. It's like we find out she doesn't know anything about herself, doesn't really have any memory. It turns out she was cryo-frozen because of what appeared to be like a commercial space liner accident.
Yeah, so at this point in time, the Earth is basically abandoned because of some accident with the hyperspace gates that allow them to move from planet to planet, and it's implied that whatever accident made everyone abandon Earth is the same accident Faye was involved with.
Yeah. And that's what I found really interesting is we don't even know much about the gate. You know, the gate kind of features prominently in 1 or 2 episodes, but we never even find out how that happened. All you can do is like watch it and go, okay, so it blew a chunk off the moon and created an asteroid belt around Earth that kind of slowly bombards the planet. So Mars is really the center of
humanity,
the solar system. Yeah. And it's just the solar system. It's kind of interesting how they've terraformed all these different planets, because that's kind of the sci-fi aspect they go with. So Mars is terraformed, Venus is terraformed, moons of Jupiter are terraformed, even like asteroids in the asteroid belts. And they're named after places we were familiar with. Like one of them in the first episode, it's Tijuana.
Yeah.
And it like kind of looks like Tijuana. Like each city or each planet has its own like world. So like the asteroids kind of look like Tijuana, and Ganymede is like the ocean world, and Europa is kind of like the desert world or stuff like that. Venus has like the floating plants, and then we learn in the middle of the season that Titan had a war that went on that Vicious was involved in, Spike's rival. So all this kind of stuff, it's a very rich and deep universe, but you just they leave so much out of it.
Yeah, and
for me, I guess that was an attractive feature.
Well, no, I think it is. You know, there's a point at which you go, "Hey, I need more information," and that's a problem. And then there's another point where you go, "Okay, you've given me enough information that I understand the universe and whatnot that these characters inhabit, but you're not. It's not an information dump, and you let me fill in the gaps." Mm-hmm. It's actually something that comics have actually been doing a lot better lately.
Oh, really?
Something like a book like Saga, right, for example, where they just kind of throw you into this universe and you figure out the details as you go, but it's close enough to what we understand as normal that we can fill in the gaps as needed with a kind of other information. Like, here are the important differences, and you can fill in the other information. Sure.
And I think what's the other aspect, not just the characters, but the writing of like the way each episode is constructed, the way it kind of keeps pace. You have this kind of initial, here's what we have to do, let's go try and do it, and then it all goes to hell, and they get out of it by the skin of their teeth, but just barely. Like, they always seem to wind up in more debt with every misadventure they go into.
Right.
Even their best laid plans just kind of go awry.
Yeah, the further the series goes on, the more and more that them not having food becomes a thing.
Oh yeah, like where Faye is eating dog food in one episode.
Or like...
I thought that was really funny.
Or the mushrooms.
The mushroom episode is great. Not just because of like how funny it is, but again, because like the references, like that's basically a little blaxploitation episode.
Right.
Right? Like the shows dip into genres without, with almost no problem, right? They'll dip into like pure science fiction with like the kid that doesn't age episode, and then they'll dip into like a western like with the first episode, or they'll do blaxploitation like Mushroom Boogie, where you've got visual references to like Pam Grier movies like Foxy Brown and Coffee, and then like one of the characters calls himself the youngest of the Shaft brothers, all the while he's dragging a coffin like the movie Django that gets run over by a truck while he's trying to give the big speech about it, like stuff like that, and the show just skips in and out of them almost seamlessly, and it makes like perfect sense. Yeah, that this is just this postmodern universe.
I think the part that I love the most about the blaxploitation episode there is the fact that the character from the ship that is involved the most is the little kid Ed.
Yes.
It's just such a bizarre pairing with Ed and that particular scenario.
Yeah, because the crew gets high off their fucking brains.
With yeah.
Which is...
Like Spike is just endlessly walking up and down the same step.
Yeah. And you notice with a few exception, I think with only one exception, every episode is named after a song.
Yes, I did notice that.
The only episode that it's not named after a song is the episode Pierrot la Fou, which is named after a Jean-Luc Godard movie called means Pierre Goes Wild, and that's the episode with the kind of guy with the helium suit that kicks the shit out of Spike.
Yeah.
Like that was and again, it's like one of those bizarre sci-fi human weapon episodes, right? It's a different episode each time. And each character kind of has their own, genre world. So like Spike is the Bruce Lee, John Woo type character. Jet is your film noir cop, and Faye is your femme fatale, while Ed is your hacker character.
Yeah.
They all kind of the genre blending is so seamless. I was impressed, like rewatching it, how much it still holds up.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. I mean the show is now 20, almost 30 years.
20. It's approaching 20, right? 1998.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, approaching 20 years old.
20.
Well, it's an impressive. It holds up impressively, I should say.
Yeah, it really does. I think we should also talk about the music.
I was waiting for you to bring that up.
Because like when I was younger, when I was in college and I was kind of watching this, every couple of months I would go through the series when I was in college. I had most all of the soundtrack CDs that went to this, and there's a lot of music that goes into it.
Yes.
And there was a lot of albums that came out. And it's, that kind of the fusion that it's of musical styles done by the musical director Yoko Kanno that's what just stands out, is how good the music is to the series.
An impressive amount of jazz in there.
Blues, jazz, folk, even some kind of like adult contemporary sneaks its way in there if you're really listening for it.
Yeah.
It's really simple. What it's great is how well it's matched up with what's going on screen.
And at times, some of the music I would not have expected to go well with that scene. So
I know exactly what you mean.
The closing credits of the show are called the Real Folk Blues.
Right.
And they use that. The last two episodes are also Last Folk Blues Part 1 and 2. And towards the beginning of I guess it's not the beginning. It's like the middle of the last episode when Spike actually goes to confront Vicious.
The climactic, charge.
Yeah.
Into the headquarters.
And they use the Real Folk Blues for that. And I would have never thought to do that.
No, but
it's gorgeous. Oh my God.
Yeah, you got to give the director a lot of credit for how well it's choreographed. There's some times where it's a little stiff, like the animation for the action's a little stiff, but for the most part, like the animated action sequences are so fluid and so dynamic and so, on the edge of your seat. It's really something like American action movies, like live action movies, couldn't attain.
Yeah. Actually, one of the best ones was Hard Luck Woman, when Spike tries to fight Ed's dad.
Yeah, loses so badly.
And Ed's dad does nothing.
Right, he just kind of stands there, just hits him in the face, and it's over.
Right, but just like the fluidness of Spike's movements.
Mm-hmm.
In that particular fight. I mean, when I say fight, it's really Spike's taking swings and kicks at Ed's dad, and Ed's dad's doing nothing.
He's just he's just moving slightly to the left, slightly to the right, and Spike can't land a shot.
Right, but the fluidness with which Spike moves is really impressive. And
the whole show is
amazing animation there.
Yeah, from almost top to bottom, I find it hard to find. You have to really nitpick to find something wrong with the show, and it's usually just kind of like really nitpicky stuff, because there's nothing wrong with the show. Every now and again they get kind of they do a little strange sciencey stuff, like I don't know if the shuttle Columbia can take off under its own power, like as in
at this point, no,
certainly not, because it's not real or not intact anymore. But
that was a moment, and it's completely, I mean, there was no way for them to predict this because it came out several years prior to. But the fact that the shuttle Columbia, and they start talking about having lost a lot of heat tiles.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
I just went,
I noticed
oh, Like, I
like, oh,
physically cringed.
Yeah, we know that like, oh, actually, we know how that turns out, and you won't be taking a photo with that ship when it's down.
Right.
But I think overall, this is one of those series where I was like, if you're not that into anime, this is almost the perfect American anime. You know, this is the one you do, and even the Wikipedia page said it's like known as a gateway anime for people who want to get into anime, into the medium.
Yeah.
And I would recommend it to pretty much anyone. It's just, I mean, what were you hadn't seen it in a long time. What was like?
No, I hadn't seen it, period.
You hadn't seen it, period. Okay, I hadn't seen it in a while, but you hadn't seen it, period. What was kind of like, what took you by surprise as someone who came into it cold?
I don't know about took me by surprise. What I enjoyed, I think, some of the most is the fact that it covers so many different conceptual ideas. You know, each episode almost inevitably is different and unconnected to the last one. I mean, in part, that's the definition of episodic, but even in terms of what it's trying to deal with and the concepts it's addressing. And I think there were a couple of episodes that covered story concepts that I was familiar with. The one in particular is the episode Brain Scratch, where there's basically a cult that is saying they can download your consciousness into a computer and then, you know, do away with your physical body. Mm-hmm. And there's a very similar story in one of the early issues of Transmetropolitan. Mm-hmm. But the stories are they approach it from such a very different perspective, in part because obviously the different characters. And I don't mean just like, you know, Transmetropolitan doesn't have the Cowboy Bebop characters. I mean, the characters in and of themselves are very different. Mm-hmm. But also the different concepts of, you know, we've talked about this before, East versus West when it comes to technology and their feel towards it. And this is one of I think the most poignant episodes about that. You know, you're downloading yourself into a computer. You are becoming a computer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, from a Western, somewhat technophobic perspective, you know, that's a terrible thing. But from an Eastern perspective, the characters don't necessarily accept the idea right away, but they're not virulently opposed to it. Mm-hmm. And it's you know, like that kind of look at stories is always interesting. And the other thing I think, I guess, like I mentioned this to you off air, is the interpersonal moments. Mm-hmm. There are some really just pulling at your heartstring moments.
Sure.
And I mean, guys, some of these I'm focusing on just because, like I said, I watched the last 4 episodes today. I've watched the last probably 16 episodes in the last 4 days or so. So towards the end of the series, Ed actually leaves the ship to go off with his father. And her father, that's right. Yeah, well, I mean, it is hard to tell.
Yep.
Even Ed's father forgets. He's like, oh, thanks for watching my son. Or is it my daughter?
I forget which. Well, yeah. I like that we find out Ed's real name is like Francois or something.
Right. Well, and I mean, Ed says straight up in the first time we meet him or her that I'm still doing it. The first time we meet her, that she gave herself the name Ed.
Right, and I love that in the one of the previous things, like, if you made it up, how are you the fourth?
Right. Right. That is good. No, but part of what I was saying is, like, so there's a conversation between Ed and Ein, the dog. The dog doesn't talk, but Ein doesn't want Ed to leave. Mm-hmm. And Ed's trying to tell Ein to go back, and he just won't go. And so Ed says, all right, you can come along. Mm-hmm. And Ed literally walks off into the sunset.
Right.
Actually, you know, that's also another thing. I like how the series really kind of wrapped itself up in terms of, like, you knew the end was coming, and they started setting certain things up, like Ed finding her father and whatnot.
Yeah, Faye kind of finally figure out who she is. Jet, settling his past before Spike does.
Well,
the show's really revolved around Spike.
It is. Where Faye finds her past, but realizes she has nothing left of it.
Right.
And at first, basically, I mean, quite literally wallows in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, she basically goes and looks like she traces out where her bed used to be in the remains of her family's house, and just lies down there for a while. And eventually she decides that, hey, she needs to come back to Bebop. She needs to come back and live. And she calls Spike out on his shit. Like, Spike constantly tells her not to live in the past, live for the future. Live for what's going on. You know, you don't remember your past, that's fine. And then when Spike becomes obsessed with his past in the last 2 episodes,
yeah, he's just completely absorbed in it.
Right.
Like, every time, you know, a name remotely similar to his past pops up, he goes, you know, apeshit.
Yeah, but like Faye calls him out on it,
Mm-hmm.
or you get the what is effectively the Last Supper, you know, Spike's last meal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jet cooks in this meal, and it's very reminiscent of the beginning of the first episode,
Right.
where he makes him the meal, and Spike complains about
It's bell peppers and beef with no beef.
Right. Spike complains how crappy it is.
It's one of my favorite lines in the show. He goes, "Hunger is the best spice."
Yeah.
Like, I still use that line today.
Yeah.
You know, it's really something.
So you get this parallel between the beginning and the end, and you know the series very much leaves it in doubt whether or not Spike survives.
I mean, I think it was pretty clear to me that he doesn't. You know what I mean?
I don't.
The way it was.
I don't think
filmed.
I don't think he does either. Again, like you're right, the way it's filmed. Having kind of dug around online about this, there's a fair amount of discussion about it.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
But you know, given, you know, presumably Spike is dead, it really is like a last meal before an execution, and it
Sure.
even has some of that feel to it, where Spike is just at peace.
Right.
He's accepted his fate, and that he probably will not get out of it.
Well, and like everything from his past has basically been undone. Like, we see Annie from the 5th episode dies. She reappears. You know, other people.
Killed.
Julia's killed. Shin and Lin are both dead, and we were led to believe that they were obviously younger than Spike, so they looked up to him in some capacity.
Yeah.
Really, it had this finality feel to it. Also, the sequence where Vicious and Spike trade weapons, they slide the weapons back and forth. You know, their weapons get exchanged in a fight, and they re-exchange them, you know, their weapons of choice to finish each other off, is right out of, I mean, like, directly out of A Better Tomorrow 1 from John Woo.
Yeah.
And that's the Chow Yun-fat character who gets killed in that. So just based on what they're referencing, I would have just to say he doesn't survive. And I think in my world it makes more sense if he doesn't survive.
No, and I was actually thinking, you know, as much as I don't think they should ever add on to this. Let's just
No.
I would be curious to see more stories of Faye and Jet trying to move forward.
Right.
Because I think, assuming Spike is dead, leave Spike. And I think those two characters moving forward, dealing with the fact that Spike is gone, and the recent revelations in their own lives, and how does it change and upend their existence?
Yeah, there's not much of a bookend for those two. Like, right. You know, the final times we see both of those characters is Jet is just wiping down the ship in some nondescript location. Like, just on the bridge, just wiping something down, and Faye's crying. So, like, you don't know how they, you know, move forward. Ed kind of has the only other bookend to her story is she goes live with her dad.
Yeah, and I think that would be interesting. I would not, in any way, shape, or form, want to change how the ending went, though. I think it was just so beautifully done, so cinematic.
So even in the movie, like the Cowboy Bebop movie that came out well after this, it's apparently set in between episodes 23 and 24.
I thought it was 22 and 23.
Or it could be 22. Either of those two.
Yeah, but yeah, it's set. It's actually set during the series.
It's set during the series, so you have everyone in play. And it was actually, the movie's pretty good. I remember when the movie came out, it was such a big deal for me. Like, and I convinced my dad to take me to New York to one of the Times Square theaters so we could see this movie. Back when $10 a movie ticket was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like
Right.
those kind of prices. It was myself, my father, and then my buddy Dan. We took the train in, went to the movie, we ate something in Times Square, and then we came home.
Nice.
It was like the best day ever, right? We got to see the Cowboy Bebop on the big screen and hear Steve Bloom's voice on those big surround sound speakers.
Yeah.
Which is really just kind of what you want.
Actually, the other thing I thought of with wrapping up the series, and it's one of the best parts of the entire series in general, like overall, is the fact that they canceled Big Shots.
Yeah, that was so funny.
I mean,
and then she sees him in the
sees
you
him
hear
in the
how
airport.
like the voice is such a put on, and Judy's like, I'm gonna talk to my agent, and then Faye sees Punch in the airport, which I always thought was a good touch.
Who also has a put on voice.
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
it's great.
That show in general was just so funny.
Yeah, and you pick up on obviously the little reference. It's Punch and Judy.
Yeah.
Like the puppet shows, the Punch and Judy puppet show. That stuff is all over that series, which I think just makes it more fun. I don't even know if it makes it a better series, but it certainly makes it more fun.
Well, it's those kinds of references that are not in your face. Like if you had no idea about that reference,
right,
it wouldn't matter. It's still a really good part of the show. But if you know it, it's even better. And that's what.
Yeah, like
that's how references need to be.
Sure. Like another good example is like the three hijackers they bust on the Venus episode. Their names, if you look at their names when he puts in to get his reward, they're Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
I did see that.
Or even like more kind of like subtle references that, can be disputed, like Doohan apparently is a reference to the Star Trek actor James Doohan.
Okay.
And his assistant Miles is a reference to Miles Davis.
Interesting.
And so he's wearing blue. So like Kind of Blue was Miles Davis' big album.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. It's subtle, and you're like, okay, you could argue that, but it just feels like the way that show goes, you just feel like, okay, that was probably intentional.
Yeah. I mean, like so much of pop culture, just the reference dropping is so obvious. It's kind of mildly offensive almost.
Yeah, but I think that was the point of the show, right?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is with this, it's subtle and it adds to the character of the show.
Yeah, it gives it a nice texture.
Especially, the fact that they live in a near future time period.
Mm-hmm.
These kinds of references would still exist,
mm-hmm.
and it helps root the universe they inhabit more squarely into our reality.
Yeah, we have some kind of connection between them and us.
Right.
Even like the Bruce Lee references in like the first or second episode, the Abdul Hakim. It was like just this obvious homage to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's character in Enter the Dragon.
Right.
Stuff like that. And the Bruce Lee stuff is all over the place. I think that stuff is just fantastic. Like I said, it gives it a texture where, for whatever reason, it makes the show more tangible. It's something you can kind of grab onto.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Because I've yet to really come across someone who didn't enjoy this show. Like you have to like really nitpick it to kind of take it apart, because otherwise it's this big sci-fi western that I think any fan of anime or westerns or science fiction or really pick your genre, you've got your choice in there.
Yeah, I mean, our friend Kyle, Steve Bloom was at Tidewater Comic Con, beginning of this year or so, and like this was Kyle's highlight, was getting him to sign a bunch of Cowboy Bebop stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
although why he wore the shirt, still...
I don't know either. But like he wouldn't shut up about it for like 2 weeks.
I know. I mean, I wouldn't either. But Steve Bloom signs the kid's shirt, and then he starts wearing it, and he's like dripping food and sauce on it. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't just give me the shirt, you fuck stick. Oh my god.
It happens.
It was so funny. You wore it to Phoenix Con, right? That's where I said it had to be when you wore it. I was like, why would you do that?
Yep.
Why would you do that?
I'm more impressed with like where he got all the Cowboy Bebop merch.
Yeah,
he had like a shirt, a hat, like the Blu-ray, like he had all kinds of stuff signed.
Yeah, I don't even have that much Cowboy. I have like the DVDs from like 2002, and that shit was expensive. I was back when there was still a Sam Goody. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah.
And Sam Goody was the only place I could get anime because it was kind of before Barnes and Noble or Best Buy really went all in on anime. It was Sam Goody is where you went, and like those discs were $45 each.
Yeah.
It was a heavy duty investment. Like I had to like save up for them because I was a broke ass college student, so I would like buy one and then I had to wait 2 months to get the next one.
Yep.
It was I'm gonna do it in order and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know where. Even at conventions, I always keep an eye out for like action figures or little Cowboy Bebop statues, and I never see them. Like I mean, almost never. I think I saw one at the Phoenix convention this year, and that was the first time in years.
Yeah, although interestingly enough, every so often you do see a cosplay.
Yeah, even those are fairly rare.
Normally it's Faye.
Yeah.
In part A, just because of the outfit, but also, you know, she's probably the most distinctive looking. But yeah, I mean, you'll still see him every so often.
Now that you bring this up, I got to look this up because there was a fairly famous cosplay guy, and it was like Man-Faye or something like that.
Nice.
I forgot who it was. Yeah, Man-Faye. I think that's who. Yeah, Man-Faye. He had shown up to conventions and kind of become a minor internet celebrity.
Nice.
As Man-Faye, because it was just kind of like, you know, oh good God, this is really something.
It's not something good, but it's something.
I don't know if it's whether it's good or bad remains to be seen, but it's definitely something. But I'm actually looking at some of these girls who do the cosplay. It's partially because like in the anime, Faye's proportions are so ridiculous. It's really hard to get it right.
It is.
And you gotta love the way the jiggle-mation they gave to that character.
Especially in the opening title.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those things have a mind of their own. Like those things they'll bounce around. It's like I don't even think she turned that direction. They just decided to go left when she's what? How? Okay, I'll go along with that. So I'm not sure which more we can sing the praises of this show. How much longer we can go on like this? Because
yeah. No, I was gonna ask if you had anything else that you wanted to say.
I don't think so. I don't know if it still runs on Adult Swim, but I think even if it doesn't, parts of it are on Hulu. Like I think a couple of the dubbed episodes, but it's also subtitled on Hulu. So if it's on Hulu now, I think, you know, do yourself a favor and watch the show, especially if you're a non-anime fan. If it doesn't grab you in like the first 5 episodes, I'm not sure you're going to enjoy the show. But if I would at least give it those first 5 episodes, because it really is a fantastic and enjoyable watch on almost, you know, every level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't take it too seriously, because it's not. That's the one thing I think you have to remember is it's not it's not that serious of a show. There's definitely some serious, tongue-in-cheek, you know, self-aware moments the show has that prevents it from slipping into the ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just certainly. I mean, anime in general, I feel that way, but.
Yeah, you definitely have to take anime with a grain of salt.
Well, I would just say in its own context.
Yeah, that's actually a better way of putting it. It's just in its own world, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, all right. So, other than Cowboy Bebop, what have you been into this week?
Reinstalling all my games on my computer, or not really reinstalling them, but for whatever reason, last night, every single game would not start on Steam. So I have gone down the line of all 32 of them.
Oof. And
there's this thing, not reinstall them, but you can, in Steam, you can, what's called verify integrity of game cache.
Yeah. And
I just had to do that for each and every one of them. Just because, like, none of them were playing. Like, didn't matter which game I was clicking on, none of them were playing.
That's unfortunate.
So it was like torture. It started with Total War, Shogun Total War. And then I was like, well, let me try another game. And then it was like, no! I was like, what happened? I was like, I just built this computer to play games. Don't you dare give out on me, Steam.
You're on your knees and you're doing the fucking Charlton Heston from Planet of the Apes.
Oh, yeah. It was like, God damn you. Also, finally finished Road to Wigan Pier. Finally. I am such a slow reader. I hate it.
Yeah,
but I
another
finally
feeling.
finished it. It's really good. It gives you a great insight into the guy's mind, more so than some of the other books, like what he really thinks is a person. And some of them you're like, all right, I don't think he's right about that, but that's really interesting. And also, man, he can, Orwell can tear a dude up if he's like insulting someone. It's actually a joy to read. How he'll call like certain writers like gutless versions of Kipling or something like that.
Nice.
It's like, yeah, I don't. That's mean. I don't know who this writer is. And apparently, he does not like Upton Sinclair. It was kind of funny to read him just shit on Upton Sinclair pretty hardcore,
Hmm.
just like, just shit on like his style of writing. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But that's really about it. It's been pretty low key. Work kind of swamped me, and then still dealing with the doing stuff with the show is always time consuming. And then I mean, we can off air we could talk about my trials and tribulations and fun with the local San Diego Libertarian Party. That's always fun.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about that.
It's always fun. I'm just so tired of anarchists. I'm just tired of it. I just don't. No more. No more
That's going to be
anarchists.
the sound clip for the episode. I'm so tired of anarchists.
Just done with anarchists, man. So tired of them.
Let's see. So, yeah, obviously, aside from Cowboy Bebop, which has been a big time thing because I've been trying to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna go back and reread some old Avengers comics, like not for my side project, but just some other ones. It's like I haven't read this in a while. The Hickman run.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had time for games. Like I'm looking forward to Final Fantasy 15 coming out, but I haven't played games in forever.
Yeah, like I said, I'm getting back into it now because I rebuilt this computer, so I feel obligated to play the games.
Yeah.
Like I got to do it. Donnell's playing something called Life is Strange.
Yeah.
It's almost like playing a girl detective game. It's kind of interesting. Like
Yeah.
I'm like I'm not gonna play it, but she's having a lot of fun. What was I think? She's like playing. It's like I gotta finish this game so I can bring it back. And I was like, okay.
Nice. And then work has also been taking up a fair amount of my time.
Oh yeah, you and me both then.
Well, I'm actually I have to do a biennial requal, so my test for that is in about a week and a half. So it's like, oh hey shit, I should probably start studying.
Oh fun, yeah, that's always good.
Yeah, it's like, oops, I forgot forgot about that part, the whole test part. Yeah. And then I went to a Halloween party last night that up in Williamsburg. That was a lot of fun. It was,
Good.
Shane McNulty from the Big Damn Shindig was one of the hosts, along with his brother and our friend Lori, and we had just a fantastic time. So,
Right.
all right, folks, if you like what we do, make sure you head on over to thereforegeek.com. You can check out our blog posts and our podcasts. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And you can find this podcast and other podcasts like it on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So once again, I'm Andrew.
I'm Duder.
And you've been listening to Therefore I Geek.